So let's get into some health.
Can you see my feet? Okay. I'm not wearing shoes, so I'm like, should I put on shoes?
What is her name?
Lucy.
Lucy. Okay, me and Lucy are going to be hanging. Okay, so one thing that I loved was when we met, my wife and I had just gone through this like journey of trying to get healthier, and we were starting to move more towards a holistic approach. And I remember telling you that when we were married, my wife and I, we had a run where my wife couldn't sleep at night. And then, she'd be going to bed 3, 4 in the morning. And then when I'd wake her up, I remember like waking her up and not knowing what Jen I would get. I was like, is Jen going to be, happy today? Is she going to be down today? Like, it was all over the place. Like, you could tell that something was going on with her emotional regulations that didn't seem normal. Mm-hmm. And so we went and got everything tested for her. And then we found out, there was, autoimmune issues, gut issues, a lot of the stuff that she was eating, thyroid issues, it was a big deal, right? So we started going through this new, basically, way of living, which was cutting out all processed food. For her, she had to get rid of like anything gluten. And what we ended up seeing was like a whole different person, right? Like all of a sudden, sleep was regulated, emotions were regulated. And I remember going, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Like, I have never seen a switch that big that didn't have anything to do with medicine. I remember sharing that with you. You're like, this is my world.
Yeah.
This is what I do. So we are really big believers in not just a holistic approach, but trying to actually solve the issue as opposed to potentially masking it, which felt like what we were doing prior.
Yeah.
So my question to you is it all about a holistic approach? Should we not have anything to do with conventional medicine anymore? Or are there times where you can actually implement both?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And your wife's story is very, very common. And actually what we see a lot with my practice is a lot of people are struggling mentally, and they're struggling with anxiety, sleep issues, skin issues, whether it's gut issues. And the only thing we've really been taught is, okay, something's off. We become aware of that. We have symptoms. And one thing I always say is symptoms are a whisper for the body to take more notice. So we say, okay, let's go to conventional medicine. And when it comes to a lot of these chronic health issues, like what your wife experienced, once we rule out anything that could be majorly wrong, whether it's like ulcerative colitis, maybe she's diagnosed with an autoimmune condition and then she's put on a medication for that. Maybe she's diagnosed with depression because they look at all of her symptoms and based off of set symptom clusters, they say you have major depressive disorder or you have insomnia. And so what we see when it comes to these chronic health issues, for people like your wife, is they end up on, 5+ medications for managing all of these symptoms because there wasn't anything actually, acutely wrong that they could truly find. And it's not to say that conventional medicine is wrong or bad. I really think how we've educated people on conventional medicine and really the difference between conventional and when to use it and functional medicine has really been one of the biggest problems. Now a lot more people are aware of functional medicine. So when I say that term, or I used to say that term, I'd say like a few years ago, even people would be like, what does that mean? Functional medicine, functional nutrition? Now I say to people like, oh yeah, I know a lot more about it, but simply put, right, that's taking a root cause approach, which only makes sense when we think about it of like, what is the root cause? What was the root cause of, your wife's inability to sleep and her anxiety and a lot of her mood issues where you said, I didn't know what kind of wife that I was going to be experiencing. And also that just shows how when the physical body is off, it's not just the body, it's not just the symptoms, it's not just the bloating, or it's not just that I'm overweight. It impacts every system in the entire body because we're interconnected. So when something's off with the gut, it's going to impact the brain. When the immune system is off, that's going to affect the entire body. And so what's unfortunate with conventional is we really have a fragmented care approach. So we have specialists, which we need specialists, again, when it comes to these acute-based problems. They're experts, right? You go to the gastroenterologist, you go to the dermatologist, you go to all these different specialists. And if there's something very serious going on, they can save somebody's life, right? Emergency medicine is incredible. But what we're talking about specifically with your wife is chronic health issues. And where functional medicine is very different is we're looking at the body as an interconnected system. We're looking at how all of these things intersect. How does nutrition and the foods that she's eating influence her gut health? How does her gut health then influence her immune system? Right? If she's developing maybe skin issues or maybe neurological issues, how does that impact her adrenals? And how her adrenals then impact her circadian rhythm, right. Which is going to affect her sleep and her body's cortisol response. So we start to look at it from this more interconnected place instead of just looking at all these systems fragmented and then offering medications for these different areas of the body based off of the symptoms, which actually in turn can create more symptoms and problems in the long run. And so all of this to say, I'm not the person to attack conventional medicine and say that you should not go to conventional medicine. And there's a lot of people out there who will have that frame. Conventional medicine saves lives. When you get very, very sick, we know people who've gotten in severe injuries, car accidents, veterans who fight in wars and they blow off an arm, right? Conventional medicine is going to save lives. And so we need to know when to use conventional medicine, but we haven't been educated on any other type of approach. And we're starting to have this conversation about functional medicine. It used to be considered more woo-y. But what I would really like to see is more of a conversation of here's where we go to conventional medicine, and here's when we utilize functional medicine, right? And actually seeing both of them work in tandem together. I really envision a world where maybe somebody does go the conventional medicine route and they rule out anything serious going on because sometimes that needs to take place first. But then conventional can refer to functional. And at this point in time, someone can do more of the deeper work and work on their gut health and hormonal regulation and their nutrition.
Right.
Or vice versa, functional can refer back to conventional.
Okay, so then let me ask you this. I guess the first question is, when are you supposed to use conventional versus more of a holistic approach? And maybe the second one, why does it feel, maybe there's no data to support this, but what it feels like when you go see a physician that's like conventional, they will not really either know or recommend you to a holistic approach.
Yeah.
And then when you talk to somebody who's on the holistic side, they're like, don't go anywhere near that.
Yeah.
So where's the disconnect and what's the proper way to pair the two?
Yeah. I mean, that's really what I'm working on right now is how do we begin to create more of a relationship where it's not one side fighting the other. We need to use both. We just need to create a system, in my opinion, where we can refer back and forth and both are widely accepted. I would actually love to see insurance cover not just conventional, emergency healthcare, but also cover functional healthcare and helping people take more of a preventative approach to their health, helping people get to the root cause, work on their nutrition, all of those things. That would be incredible to see because people come to my practice and maybe they've already spent a good amount of money, conventional, maybe insurance covered it, but now we want to run some more extensive labs because conventional doesn't cover things like microbiome testing. They consider it to be experimental. They don't cover things like mycotoxin testing or a lot of the other more in-depth hormone tests that we do. And so people are left paying out of pocket for a lot of these tests. And then typically the coaching and the practitioners are also out of pocket as well. So for a lot of people, it can be very expensive. And so the opportunity to even utilize functional medicine isn't even widely available for a lot of people. But in terms of your first question of when to, go to either, it's hard to say. I think for somebody who knows there's something going on, right, being able to say, I want to start first with going more of the natural route, could be a completely viable option. And maybe I want to see what type of improvement I can get. I want to run more extensive labs. And then what the functional practitioner should be able to do is if they see something really off with their labs, is then refer to conventional. And then vice versa, if somebody goes the conventional route and they run some of their tests, or maybe they do some scans, maybe they want to do colonoscopy, endoscopy, MRI, CT, they want to do a bit more of this in-depth look, and all of that checks out okay, now they can refer over to functional. So whether they should start with either first, I think it could be a personal decision on like, do I want to rule out something that's more serious going on first and then maybe go this route, or do I want to focus first more on, you know, lifestyle in this and see improvement? I think that could be more of a personal decision, but we just need that education first to be able to pick.
Okay. Is there any truth in this?
Yeah.
That if you go the conventional route and you rely on medication to mask the problem, you're constantly paying for that medication, right? You're paying into the machine.
Oh, yeah.
Holistic approach or root cause approach, you're solving the issue, and from a dollars standpoint, your money's not becoming a revenue stream, right? The issue goes away. How much does that play into the medical space right now? Because it definitely feels like you're watching a business at play.
Oh,
you're
for
watching
sure,
a
you
business
are.
go, if I heal you, I don't get revenue from you anymore. If you buy my product for the rest of your life, I now have another revenue stream. Is there any truth to that?
The whole industry between big pharma and the medical system, it is definitely a business. And a question that we need to start asking is, who's profiting off of your pain? Who's profiting off of your pain? Because somebody is making a profit off of you being sick.
Right.
Off of you getting on all these medications, and then you get on one medication, and then now you get symptoms from that medication, and now you need to get on another medication because of the symptoms from that medication. I actually said on another podcast once, and I'm like, is it really that medicine has, you know, just side effects, or does it have just effects that we don't market, that like aren't beneficial, right? And so it just has all of these effects. So, you know, yeah, it's a business, 100%. Big pharma makes billions of dollars every single year off of keeping people stuck and dependent on medication. There's been some things coming out even of RFK speaking about the use of SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, for antidepressants, and how SSRIs are as addictive, if not more, than heroin. For a lot of people. It's one of the hardest drugs to get off of. And I can actually relate to that myself because when I was a teenager, I was put on an SSRI. I was put on a very low dose when I was 14 years old because I was bullied and because I was an emotional teenager. My parents didn't know really how to handle it. But I don't blame them because what we're taught is, oh my gosh, there's something wrong, go to the doctor. So my parents brought me to the doctor. My daughter's really emotional. She's crying all the time. But no one asked me like, hey, what's going on in your life, Rachel? Are you being bullied? Any of that? Oh, let's put this 14-year-old girl on an SSRI. And then a decade later, when she's in her mid-20s, will be one of the hardest things that she ever experiences having to come off of, and lead to panic attacks, lead to massive withdrawal, massive disassociation. Like, people don't realize that for a lot of these medicines, especially the ones that are really psychoactive and influence the mind, the body begins to shift and change based off of these. And it really is a life sentence when you're getting on a lot of these things.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember going through that with Jen, where, you know, I can't remember why, but she was younger. Doctor recommended to put her on like Accutane.
Oh, I was on that too.
Yep, and then Accutane created depression, and then there was a depression medication.
I didn't put on that.
It was just
And she probably had to be on birth control for hormones because you can't be on Accutane without being on birth control. And then now she's on all these medicines.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we went through that
whole
whole
skin's clear,
thing.
But she feels like shit.
That's
and
right.
Her guts
that's
all
exactly
jacked
right.
up now.
That's exactly right. So we
and they're like, side effect, you may want to kill yourself. Is literally one of the side
100%.
effects on Accutane. You may want to commit suicide. People have before. If you get pregnant, there's a 100% chance your baby will be deformed, and you could develop ulcerative colitis, an autoimmune condition of the gut. But The most common one is just chapped lips. So,
Yeah.
and you'll have clear skin. Sign me up.
Gosh, as you say
That literally was what it was.
Gosh, now that I'm thinking back, because we had just started dating when she went through this. I remember being in Italy. I was on a skate trip, and I called her, and she's just crying. And I'm like, what's going on with you? She's like, I don't know. She couldn't even tell me why she was crying. And then I later found out that she started going through the wanting to kill herself, and all the suicidal kind of issues came to life. It was horrible. It was horrible. And then we always talk about that now, this was now a decade after when she was dealing with all the, health issues that we talked about. And you can't, it's hard to not go back to the beginning and go, did that have any impact on this?
There's definitely an association.
So what do you think is the biggest health myth out there that is wrong that you see a lot of people believe today?
Health myth that is wrong.
Yeah, is there something okay, I was always taught never have butter. Right? Butter will drive your cholesterol
the
up.
cholesterol one is a big one. So we were taught, right, if we think back to the old food pyramid, the bottom should be all breads and pasta and, minimal protein up here at the top. And then, sweets were very much up there at the top, but we were taught to eat more of this processed, heavy carbohydrate-ridden diet. And we were taught that cholesterol is bad, that meat is bad. And then we just continue to see obesity rise and rise continuously. And then we came back and we're like, oh, wait, that actually wasn't true. Meat's not bad. And there's still a lot of controversy about that. But I would say that's probably a huge one, is the entire controversy about meat being bad and how it's bad for your hormones, it's bad for your cholesterol levels. And here's the thing, if you eat more of a carnivore-based diet, your cholesterol probably will go up a bit, right? If you're eating more red meat, ideally, hopefully you're eating more grass-fed and finished options, high-quality animal protein, but cholesterol will go up. And so again, with conventional medicine, a lot of the physicians were taught, right, to look at somebody's lipid panel and say, oh, you have high cholesterol. One, cut out any kind of saturated fats, anything that has cholesterol in it. Don't eat eggs because eggs have cholesterol. It's bad. And so eat more whole grains, eat more of these kind of foods. Or they get put on a statin too, right? And so that's really the big thing. And here's the thing, we're missing the mark when we're even talking about cholesterol being bad. We need cholesterol. Cholesterol is incredibly important. It's the precursor for the production of all of our hormones. The problem isn't cholesterol either, too. The problem is metabolic issues that somebody's experiencing, metabolic syndrome. So if I see somebody who has on their blood panel hyperlipidemia, so maybe they have high cholesterol and maybe their LDL is a bit on the high side and then their HDL is a bit on the low side. But what I really want to look at with this person is what is going on with your blood sugar, what is going on with your insulin. Are you inflamed? So look at somebody's C-reactive protein levels. That's a marker for inflammation, their homocysteine levels. I want to look at the whole metabolic picture. Now, for somebody who is more metabolically healthy, they have a good fasting glucose level. It's below 90. Somebody who has good fasting insulin, it's maybe below 5. And their inflammation is very low. I'm not so worried about that person if their cholesterol is a little bit on the high side. Now, can we run maybe an advanced lipid profile on somebody and look at if there's a genetic predisposition, so we can look at markers, not to go too sciencey, but there's things like Lp(a) and oxidized LDL. These ones are really problematic and can lead to atherosclerosis. But really, if we look at the research, it's this epidemic more of metabolic syndrome, inflammation combined with insulin resistance that is really more prone to create a lot of the potential heart issues than cholesterol being the problem itself. We can see people with high cholesterol and be actually very metabolically healthy with their blood sugar and their inflammation levels.
Right. So then is there one food that you will absolutely not touch? We're talking about insulin resistance, you talk about sugar. What is the number one thing you will never go near?
Vegetable oils. If it's cooked in that.
So no vegetable oil at all?
Yeah. I'm really big on what somebody's cooking my food in. So I'll
Why is vegetable oil so bad?
It's an inflammatory fat. It's very, very high, not only just high in omega-6s, but it's massively industrialized, and it also causes a lot of oxidative stress in the body. Oxidative stress is going to cause damage to our cells, to our mitochondria. This is one of the big things that can actually lead to cancer in a lot of people. So it's like a lot of the things that we've actually, I feel like, tried to engineer ourselves that become problematic. Trans fats, right? So that was something like we created, which now we know is really bad. And so it's like these vegetable oils and seed oils, very, very inflammatory to the body. And actually, we'll run an omega-3 index too on people in my practice. Not a lot of physicians look at this, but it's the ratio of somebody's level of omega-3s. And actually, we'll look at the ratio of their omega-3s in their brain, because omega-3s and omega-6s are one of the few fats that actually cross through the blood-brain barrier, which is why omega-3s play such a huge role in memory and mental health. So people who have low omega-3s, there's a greater association with depression. When they're deficient in EPA, which is a type of omega-3, it causes shrinkage of the hippocampus in the brain, which plays a huge role in memory for people. Okay. So we can think of Alzheimer's and dementia and all of that. So, but what I'll often see is very high levels of omega-6s, these pro-inflammatory fats. So their levels of arachidonic acid are very high, and then they're deficient in omega-3s. So this whole ratio is very skewed.
Right.
And so we're seeing people eating way more of these pro-inflammatory fats. A lot of these can come from vegetable oils and seed oils. And then very deficient in a lot of these higher quality fats like omega-3s, EPA, and DHA that would come from more fatty cuts of fish.
Got it. Okay, so am I wrong in this, that we all have cancerous cells, but the things that we eat can kind of increase the exposure that then lead to ultimately having to deal with cancer in some part of the body? Is that accurate or is that not?
I don't know.
Okay. Fair.
I'm not that person to be like and try to come up with an answer.
No,
I don't know
as you
fully.
said cancer, I was like,
cancer,
I think cancer has become something that is starting to feel like
we all have the potential for it, and all of us have definitely different genetics that can be turned on and off.
I guess what I'm getting at, because it's become something that we all deal with now. Yes. And it seems like it's coming on at an earlier age. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want anybody in my family to deal with it. Really what I was trying to get at is, do you think diet is a main driver towards the amount of people struggling with cancer, and now at an even younger age? Is that one of the main factors we're dealing with?
I think it's nutrition and environment that are playing a big role.
Environment meaning?
Environment is the amount of toxins that are in our environment. These play a massive role in oxidative stress, free radical damage on our cells. That actually is one of the biggest things that will lead to the creation of cancer. So this is like carcinogens, right? So we have all heard about like smoking cigarettes and how that can lead to cancer, things like that. Of course, nutrition is going to play a huge role. So what are all of these different environmental external influences doing? Is, of course, they're going to play a role in our cellular function. They're going to play the role in how much oxidative stress we have in the body. You know, the more antioxidants that we get from our nutrition will be very preventative. The more foods that we eat that cause more oxidative stress will push us more in that direction. If we have a lot of toxins in our body, which we all do, we run environmental toxin panels also in my practice. Everybody has them. It's never a question on do you have them or don't you have them. It's how much do you have? What is your total toxic burden? Where is your oxidative stress markers? And then what health issues are you struggling with? And then how can we bring these markers overall down? But what's happening is it's all of these influences that are also playing a role in somebody's genetics, because we have epigenetics, which is how our environment, stress levels, how our nutrition turn on and off various genes that can potentially actually predispose us for things like cancer and a lot of other different health issues.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that. Like, how much does stress play into your health?
Massively.
Massively
Plays a huge role. Yeah. This is actually an area I'm very, very passionate about. So acute stress is actually great though for our health. So short-term stressors is anabolic. If you think about it, it builds back resilience. It allows the body to build back stronger. So you maybe think about a workout that you do. That's a stressor on the body.
Okay.
You're breaking down muscle tissue in the process. So you're in a catabolic breakdown state. But then you go into a recovery state after. Hopefully you get adequate rest and you fuel your body with good nutrition. And then the body builds back stronger. So the net is an anabolic state. The body builds back stronger and it's building resilience. So that's acute stress. We want acute stress. So it's not avoiding stress. But when we're talking about how bad is stress on your body, what we're talking about is chronic stress. So this is now where somebody gets stuck with their nervous system in more of this sympathetic fight or flight state. And what we want to look at here is what is actually happening within the body when somebody's operating more in this fight or flight state. And so we see inflammation increase throughout the entire body. We see the immune system completely suppressed. We see the gut shut down. So this can lead to motility issues. This can lead to a disruption in the microbiota. So lead to a lot of microbiome issues, IBS, chronic bloating. And this can also impact somebody's hormones. So typically we'll see a reduction in somebody's sex hormones. We'll see their thyroid begin to decline. So we start to see this entire cascade of all of these issues begin to happen. Autoimmune conditions at the core, we can bring these all back to the body's nervous system being stuck operating in the sympathetic state. So the immune system has been massively impacted, and the body can make mistakes and then eventually begin to attack its own tissue. Women are a lot more prone to developing autoimmune conditions. Actually, 90% of autoimmune conditions are women compared to men.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, no, it's truth. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the majority of autoimmune conditions are women. And
so why is that? Is that because of the stress issue?
Women have a much more sensitive, sympathetic nervous system. Men don't have as a sensitive of a sympathetic nervous system. And there was a really interesting study. I don't remember the study name, but we can get it and we can cite it in the notes of this podcast. But the study was done on women who were experiencing preterm depression while they were pregnant, and it increased the rate of them having an earlier delivery exponentially. However, when the man was depressed, so not when the woman was depressed when she was pregnant, but when the man was depressed, it increased the rate of delivery even greater for an earlier preterm delivery.
Wow, why is that?
Because the woman was absorbing the emotion of the man.
Dang.
So women at the core, if you think about just their nature, they're nurturing, they're absorbers. They absorb everybody's emotions around them. Women tend to be more people pleasers than men. And so a big part of this too could even be attributed to more of the personality type and how women have been conditioned to be the caretakers. And also if we look at society as a whole, now women are out working, but then they're also the moms taking care of the family. When the husband or the man experiences things that are wrong in his life, work stress, the woman absorbs it all. Like she gets 100% of the influence. And so women have much more sensitive nervous systems. And then I think there's also just the ways in which women operate and absorb so much of the emotions around them.
Oh, that's fascinating. So do you think there's importance in making sure that who you end up being with lines up?
One of the biggest decisions for your health right there is who you marry.
Right. So if you're like, let's just say in this example, you're a woman, you are naturally, or it just sounds like going to deal with more emotional aspects. You're going to pull in emotion. You might not want to be with someone who is also more emotional and wound up, or like how would you pair that? Do you want a guy who's more emotionally controlled and more stable?
I think we all do.
Okay. That's the goal.
I think that's the goal for all of us women. Women in the core are going to be more, in my opinion, more emotional in nature. And so, it does women desire to be with a man who's more grounded and not going to bring an emotional storm. Does that mean that men also, though, need to stifle their emotions, that they're not allowed to feel? That's also could be a problem, though, if we go down that road.
Yeah.
And so I want to also be careful with that, because where we see, with men who begin to hold in all of their emotions because it's weak, it's not masculine to even show or let out any emotion. I mean, if we also look at suicide rates among men, they're exponentially higher than women. And I think that also plays a huge role.
Yeah, I did know that. It's funny. I'm not an overfeeler, but I'm human. So there's definitely points in my life where I'm not feeling good, or there's, I deal with a lot of stress. And I remember for a long time, I didn't want my wife, I would not communicate to my wife the things that were super stressful in my life, because I always took the stance of, I don't want you to feel like the family is at risk with the things I'm managing over here. I almost try to have it be like a protective kind of measure. And I remember her saying one day, I don't even feel like I know what you're dealing with. You never let me in. And I remember trying to think, okay, if I'm justifying not communicating by saying I'm protecting you, but you're telling me you want to be let in on some of this stuff, I probably need to communicate it. But I do always I think just it goes through my mind, I try to be calculated at times with making sure I'm not dumping too much on her.
And I think that's
and I think that's we have to deal with it from the CEO position or the leadership position as a company, right? When you're the founder and you're the one at the top, sometimes you worry that your team or your staff is going to get stressed out if they knew all the things that are not working, or in business, it's a dumpster fire always. So you're trying to be mindful that you're still encouraging and showing confidence to the staff, but you're also not, lying to them to keep them on the sinking ship.
Yeah.
I think there is a dynamic that I think I struggle with Jen, where I'm I don't want to just dump it on you where now you're stressing out, but I do want you to know at times this is what I'm dealing with.
Dumping is very different than the allowance of emotions too. And
that's
so
good to
I
know.
think there's emotional instability, which when a woman senses that in a man is going to create instability in her.
Right.
And then a man just expressing emotions and sharing where he's at is very, very different. A man can do that from a very grounded place and communicate that, and also let out emotions, and then too on his own really let out the emotions in the way that he needs to be able to not stifle it all. That's a very healthy way of navigating that. But the constriction of these emotions, I mean,
that's where it becomes a problem.
That's where from one's health also exponentially, it's the suppression of emotions that also lead to a lot of chronic health issues. I forget what book it was in, but this author said, she used the frame rage in talking about emotion, but she said, rage turned outward is rage turned inward is ulcers. And so whatever we suppress and hold on to in the body remains in the body and manifests in dis-ease. And so we have to allow the expression of emotions in healthy outlets. Exercise can be a great way for releasing energy. Having an emotional release is very healthy. Does that mean you need to go dump on your partner?
Right.
No. But can you allow and communicate where you're at? Can you show emotion? Can you show humanity? And I get the frame of, in business, we don't want to show when we're struggling necessarily, but I also think with your most intimate partner, you can show a bit of your humanity, and that's not dumping on somebody. So dumping on somebody is, I think, where you're just unleashing everything on them. And then also too, I think a lot of people expect their partner to also just sort of hold everything for them and also even sometimes fix everything. They become the counselor, they become all of these different things. And yeah, that can be very challenging for a relationship dynamic.
I think that's a great clarification. I think that's good. Okay, I know you focus more on the health side, kind of nutrition side, and one of the kind of benefits from that is just from a fitness standpoint. You start looking better, right?
Yeah.
You get more in shape.
Aesthetics. I love working on
Yes.
aesthetics. That was my first love because I came from the bodybuilding world, the fitness world, struggled with a lot of my own health issues, gut issues, almost had my large intestine removed, was on all those medications I shared with you about, brought me into the more functional world.
Right.
And then my lens of health changed, but aesthetics was my first love. So I love aesthetics, but now I don't define health as just aesthetics. That's the difference.
Okay, so there's a perfect, you're setting me up perfectly.
Great.
How important is it to count macros and to like count calories with what you're eating? Is that something you should be doing, or should we stay away from that?
I think everybody should do it for a period of time. Should somebody do it long-term forever? No, by no means. I do find benefit for somebody who maybe doesn't really understand nutrition and what's in everything, and also how much protein, especially how much protein somebody should be eating throughout the day, because most Americans are under-proteined. And then they're probably overeating in a lot of their calories. And even sometimes if you're trying to eat healthy, I know for myself, when I started to go more on like the health path when I was in college, I was like, oh, almonds are healthy. And I would eat a ton of almonds. Well, I was eating as a snack like 800, 1,000 calories in almonds. And so that's where I think tracking macros to get an understanding of what's in everything you're eating, what's the nutrition look like, what does my plate look like with hitting the protein that I need throughout the day. So if I need for my composition to get 130 grams of protein per day, and I break that up throughout the course of the day, what should each of those portions look like, measure that out for a period of time. I think everybody should do that for a period of time. Should they do that forever? No. Does everybody want to be a bodybuilder? Does everybody want to get to, 5% body fat? No, but I think there is definite benefit for understanding nutrition. So who should track macros? Somebody who really needs to grasp and understand nutrition better for better portion control, or somebody who wants to just look like a shredded, sexy, metabolic beast. Yeah, then count macros. But for the average person, if you have a good understanding of nutrition, you know ideally how much protein you should be eating, and you're choosing good quality food, whole-based foods. It's actually hard to sometimes overeat it, but you understand the portions now at this point, so you can go off of that. I mean, that's what I do. I don't count macros or do any of that anymore. Okay. I did for a while, and my relationship with food is way better.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So, there's things that I've tried in the past, like I was doing intermittent fasting. Mm-hmm. I personally felt like crap when I was doing it. I did not feel good. If somebody's trying a diet and they don't feel good, is that a sign that something's going wrong? Or is that just an adjustment to something new?
There could be a couple of things that are happening there. So one, if we're thinking of somebody just cleaning up their diet, I'm not talking about a caloric deficit yet of like restricted eating to try to lose weight. But let's just say somebody's been eating the standard SAD diet, standard American diet, and full of a bunch of processed foods. And then all of a sudden they're like, I'm going to eat a bunch of vegetables and fruits only and chicken breasts and avocado. And they completely change their diet. Again, macros, caloric intake aside. Actually, that person making the change initially could feel a little bit worse. And the reason is because their microbiome has not adjusted to this higher fiber-based diet. When somebody's eating chicken nuggets and French fries, there's not really any fiber in that. So the microbiome is very, very low in its diversity. And so the bacteria in our gut are going to eat the foods that we eat. So now when somebody changes up their diet completely, a lot of the bacteria that we have been feeding from our previous diet actually begin to die off. And some people can actually start to get sick. They can get skin rashes. They can get something called Herxheimer's reaction, where this bacteria is dying off, releasing a good amount of endotoxins throughout the body. And this can create sometimes GI issues, can create brain fog, and they're like, I'm trying to eat healthier and I feel worse. But this is where if somebody starts slower on the fiber intake and they gradually adjust to it over time, we can limit a lot of that. But normally that goes away within a couple of weeks, this die-off reaction, as their microbiome begins to adjust. So somebody could because of that. But in terms of going into a bit more of a deficit for a period of time, if somebody has a lot of stress already, a lot of things that they're doing, entrepreneurs could be an example of this. Maybe their thyroid isn't where it should be. Maybe they're already operating in a much more inflamed state, and maybe they've already been restricting. This is common with a lot of women. They're already used to kind of being in this diet place. So then now, I could maybe speak to me. They're dieting, and then they're running a business. They're doing all these things. So there's a lot of stress already happening, and they're like, I'm going to introduce ice baths and intermittent fasting. What did we just do? We just stacked more stressors on. And so this has increased the overall amount of stress on the nervous system. So for a lot of people, they can feel a lot worse based off of this, because in a nut deficit too, everything metabolically begins to slow down. We're not getting adequate energy intake. For some people in my practice, what we actually need to do, if they've been operating more in like a higher stressed place, maybe they've already been doing a lot of chronic dieting, right, which is a stressor on the body, we need to actually feed them up for a period of time. We need to increase calories. We need to do more parasympathetic activities, get away from, the ice baths and things like that, allow their hormones, their gut health, their detoxification processes to operate better, because we can't do that when we're in a deficit. They don't operate to their full capacity. Everything slows down. And then from that point, now we can push them into a bit more of, you could say, like a fasting cycle where we're adding on these stressors, and they're going to respond a lot better.
Okay, so stressors aren't necessarily bad. It just is dependent on where you're at.
Dependent on where you're at, exactly.
Okay, something like an ice plunge, right? There are benefits to it, but you need to make sure that you're first in a position to where it becomes a benefit, as opposed to continuing to
If you're already operating in a chronic stress place and you're struggling with sleep and you got a lot of work stuff going on, you may feel better in the midst of it, right? You may feel better during the workout, but a good question is, how do you feel after? If you feel even more depleted, it's probably just more so taxing the body, and you're actually not getting a lot of the benefit that you could be getting from it. And it's probably time to pull back. One of my favorite quotes I read recently is, sometimes we need to disengage to re-engage.
That's good. I like that. How important is sleep? Like, is there a certain hour that you have to get, and if you don't, it's big on how your body's performing?
Oh, yeah. What if I just said, though, like, it's not important. You really don't need it.
Well, I know, but what's interesting? Like, I grew up, and I don't know if this is like a personality type or this is an example of the people that I looked up to, but it was very much so like, do more than the person next to you, outperform, right?
Oh,
and so
like sleep less or sleep more?
I always took it as sleep less, right? Wake up early, get more time in the day.
That's the society we live in, right?
Yeah, but like Elon.
Who's hustling harder?
Yeah, so here you have Elon Musk, who you like hear about freaking sleeping on the couch for 3 hours, getting up, working, outrageously.
And what do we do?
And then you have Huberman, right? And Huberman's like the opposite. Like, you have to sleep. This is one of the best things we could do to perform. Where is the right balance? Like,
I'm with Huberman there, 100%. So I went through that cycle of, I'm going to set an alarm. I'm going to get up early. I'm going to get as much done as possible. And I had never experienced so much burnout. And how that impacted my business was way worse than anything else. And so actually I had to change my frame around it. I now view sleep as part of my business investment. I actually do not set an alarm anymore. I let my body wake up. Today I woke up at 4:30 though. So like I go to bed early, but if my body wants to sleep till 5:30, if it sleeps till 6, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've slept in. But I let my body wake up naturally. I let it actually get the rest and recovery that I need. And it's actually been the best thing that I could ever do for my business. My creativity improved. I'm actually more efficient in the things that I'm doing. My nervous system is much more regulated. And so I would almost argue that I'm getting more done now by not trying to force myself onto the schedule based off of what everybody else is doing, trying to get up at this time with doing this, instead of trying to fit into what we've been taught and praising people for getting to the place where they're so burnt out, but they're accomplishing a lot. But hey, they feel like So great.
So longevity. So then, do you do anything when you go to sleep? Like, when you talk about, it sounds like letting your body tell you when it's time.
Yeah.
Like, do you worry about like lights?
Oh yeah.
Red light. Like.
Oh yeah. Do you see my red light over there?
No, I didn't see it. Okay.
I
Okay.
do,
There we go.
light.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're mindful of
I'm mindful of a lot
letting
of it.
your body relax and put it in a position where
Yeah.
it is time to rest.
I'm mindful of my circadian rhythm.
There you go.
That's the big piece. So one, good night's sleep starts in the morning. So getting sunlight in the morning is going to help with your body's cortisol response. Our cortisol spikes in the morning. Cortisol spikes in the morning and then it goes down throughout the day. It should be the lowest at night. But a lot of our artificial lights, the blue light, all of that keeps our cortisol levels higher. If our cortisol is higher, we're not going to be able to sleep. But also, too, in the dark is where our melatonin levels start to pick up. So you can think of cortisol in the morning and then at night melatonin, and this is our entire circadian rhythm. Right. And when this gets off, our entire sleep regimen gets off. People experience jet lag, right? They can experience quite a bit of that, but it's actually sunlight is one of the best things that you can do. Ideally, within the first 30 minutes of when you wake up. I like the red lights because that actually can still help quite a bit too with your circadian rhythm. And the evening time, when the sun goes down, when it's naturally going down, trying to limit a lot of the artificial light. So you could use some red light at that time, lighting candles, fire. We evolved with fires. We did not evolve with these bright fluorescent lights in our homes. You can be a nerd and get some blue light blocking glasses too, like I have. And then nutrition. If we can be done eating dinner by 6 p.m.
I just learned this.
Yes.
I just learned this.
6 p.m. Yeah. So circadian rhythm fasting is way better for the nervous system and sleep.
Right.
And your HRV. So a lot of people will now track their HRV, which is heart rate variability in terms of overall recovery. You can also look at it, this is an indicator of where your nervous system is at. But studies have shown that when we can increase that window before bed of not eating, HRV improves exponentially. But the later we eat closer to bed, HRV goes down. But so the reverse, typical fasting, where a lot of people skip their breakfast in the morning, they just drink coffees. You know, the coffee is going to induce cortisol. We're going against our natural circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
So circadian rhythm fasting is a bit of the opposite. It's eating in the morning, it's eating lunch, it's being done with dinner by 6 p.m. and then fasting in the evening time and still getting that longer fasting time.
So this is, okay, so I must have got trapped by some video that made me feel
I think everyone did that for a while.
I'm all hot on intermittent fasting, right? I'm like, all right, boom, wake up. I don't eat till noon. Coffee is like helping the gap. And I feel like crap, right? I feel like crap. And then a lot of the stuff I get into is because of Jen. And so Jen's like, no, we're doing this wrong. We need to be eating right when we wake up, and we need to stop eating. Like the person that she was talking to was like, don't eat past 5. Give yourself, hours of, and I might say this wrong, but if we're digesting, we're not creating melatonin, right? So you need time afterward to then start producing melatonin to then go to sleep, right? And then Jen got into getting rid of the blue lights at night and having, the blinds be open in the mornings, everything you're saying. Yeah. And I will say, I have never felt better when I started doing that. Like, I was always the eat right before bed, lights on, computer open, just freaking grind.
Oh, yeah.
I feel so good this way. But I will say I still do the alarm.
You still do the alarm?
I like that you said that. I still do the alarm. I think there's actually a lot of, just hearing that, I'm like, yeah, that's probably an area I can work on.
Yeah. I work to the point where I have the permission to not set an alarm. Anywhere between 8 and 9:30. That's right. You texted me last night about the podcast, and I was like, oh, he's up late. Yeah, I was already asleep. I was already in bed. It was like 10 almost, and I was like, oh, he's up late. It's really not that late. I've become like my childhood nightmare. Yeah. Of I want to go to bed early. I like to wake up early naturally. I want to eat all my vegetables.
I need to
I'm
be
the boring
talking
friend.
to you more. I need to.
I'm that boring friend.
Is there anything that kids have to deal with in regards to this? as far as how they're eating, stressors, or do you not have to worry about this until you get to a certain age?
I mean, kids are definitely dealing with it. When I think of myself growing up, I mean, I was outside playing, I was climbing trees. I feel like most kids these days, they're just on technology. They're on the iPhones or on the iPads. And so, I mean, they're experiencing all of these things as well, too.
How bad is that? How bad is it for having kids on iPads and phones and TVs?
I think that there's just a need for restriction also, too. We just live in a dopamine addictive society.
Yeah, I love the feeling of dopamine. I hear you.
Yeah, I did too. But dopamine restriction. So, all right, flip a coin. Today I'm going to go to Starbucks or I'm not going to go. Right? And so we can have some times where we restrict dopamine, and that can actually be very healthy. Dopamine fast can be good. So I'm going to take a day of not being on social media. Maybe I'm not going to do caffeine for this day. Allow your nervous system to reset, because these also are going to be big stimulants too for the nervous system, constantly being upregulated. So obviously it's not like kids don't use technology, don't use iPhones. Just the way the world is evolving is it's going to continue to evolve with us. But I think the need for restriction at times is definitely very, very helpful.
Oh, that's good. All right, I'm going to do something. We've never done this before, and I don't even know if it's going to work. So we're going to test it on you.
Great.
This is going to be like a overrated, underrated, and I'm just going to give you a, what do you think?
Great.
Right? Rapid fire approach.
Rapid fire.
Okay, fasting, overrated or underrated?
Underrated if it's circadian rhythm.
Probiotics.
Underrated.
Carnivore diet.
Underrated. I like carnivore diet.
Yes. Supplements.
But not long term. I like it as a therapeutic diet.
Oh, shoot. Okay. So can we talk about that?
Yeah.
We're bouncing off the rapid fire because I'm on the carnivore diet right now.
I like carnivore.
And
I do like it.
Freaking love it. I
bet
feel
you feel
so
great.
good. I do. I really do. This is what I want to ask you because this is so nice. I went basically like protein heavy, cut out
Great.
all sugars, all carbs, all processed food. Like I was pretty strict in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then I started moving over to where I would probably say it's like 80-20 now. Mm-hmm. But I feel so good.
Oh, yeah.
Why is that? And why should we only do carnivore for a limited amount of time?
Yeah. I mean, if I were to do any diet, like I could say carnivore is like a fad diet, I would go carnivore, in a heartbeat. One, it's going to prioritize getting enough protein, which we talked about earlier. Most people are massively under-proteined. But also, too, people notice a lot of the benefits with their gut as well. And so what do bacteria eat? Fiber. These are prebiotics. They eat carbohydrates. So a lot of people who even have GI issues, they go on something like the carnivore diet. They notice, they're like, my bloating's gone, my belly's flat.
Yes.
You maybe experience that. I feel so much better. Did not get rid of the issue. So this is where I don't like it for solving those issues. But there's great benefit for carnivore, even more of a restrictive. I don't know if you've heard of the Lions diet before. Michaela Peterson,
This is the first person I ever.
that. Yeah.
She's the first person I ever heard talk about it because I heard Jordan say something like, "This is all I eat now."
Yeah, it's even more restrictive than the carnivore diet. So it's just ruminated meat. So typically it's just lamb and beef. So like there's no eggs, there's no chicken, there's none of that. That's in there too. But that's an incredible therapeutic diet for people who have autoimmune conditions. Mm. It can help heal the gut, but it's a temporary diet. People are actually only meant to do it for 40 days. And then there's an introduction period, but the gut begins to heal and the immune system that's been activated can begin to come down. And especially if you compare that with actually working on the immune system and working a bit on the gut. But after, I really like to focus on building back up a robust microbiome. And so people will feel better on the carnivore diet with their guts, but it didn't fix a lot of their microbiome issues. So a lot of the bacteria, when they're not being fed, will go dormant. You can think of them like they're sleeping. But now you go out to eat and you have some carbohydrates, and then it all comes right back. So we didn't fix it. But I do like it because it is very, very high in protein. People are going to be very satiated full. It's very hard to overeat steak.
I know that was the thing I noticed. Like I
weight.
ate and ate and ate.
Oh yeah, and you can eat plenty,
And
all the ribeyes.
And I never felt stuffed.
Yeah.
Like I never felt bloated. I was like, this is
But you felt full.
I felt full, just not stuffed.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so then when you start introducing foods, you've said multiple times now the importance of high protein. So maintain a high protein.
Maintain high protein.
And then have or implement or bring in some type of carbs. Do we need to make them complex carbs?
Some vegetables and fruit. I don't even care if it's necessarily bringing in bring in rice or any things like that. I'd say let's bring in some fruits. Polyphenols are great. Blueberries are phenomenal. I'm a big dark chocolate fan. That'd be the hardest part.
Okay.
But it's a great source of polyphenols. I'm a big matcha fan too. So I don't think matcha's, I guess, how restrictive you are on the carnivore diet with doing it, but more berries, more fruits into the diet, incorporating cruciferous vegetables can be great, really great for detoxification, feed a lot of the good microbes in the gut. And so I like to still have some vegetables and fruits, high polyphenols, some fibers, so we can still have a good robust microbiome.
Right.
We can use probiotics, but there's a lot of research that probiotics don't actually colonize to the gut. So they have transitory benefits as they're moving through us. So they can work on the immune system, they can support the gut lining, they can fight off bad bacteria, certain probiotics that are spore-based bacteria. Some of those have been shown that they can colonize into the gut, but how do we really build a healthy biome that's diverse? Is going to be a lot through diet. So it's going to be the fibers, it's going to be the polyphenols, and food rotations with a lot of those.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to finish this on this. This one's like a personal one.
Okay.
We dealt with mold in the house.
Yeah.
Like, we had a moment where I can't remember if I told you this or not, but Jen got pregnant with our newest. She's 2 now. And Jen has never been sick being pregnant. Like, whenever she would get pregnant, she would actually feel better than when she wasn't. And then this one, she was so sick. And we were like, dang it. Like, here's the one where, you're just not feeling good. Our baby's born, and then Jen's continuously sick every other week. And then it started happening to 2 of our younger, everyone's sick. And then finally, one random day, my wife moved something. There's black mold basically coming out of and we went, holy crap. We tested it, and the levels that it was at, it was like the people that came out that tested, they're like, let's say toxic.
Did you move?
Oh, when my wife saw the toy, we immediately left, and we stayed at her parents for like a week, and then while we got it tested, and then once we got the results, we never went back.
Yeah.
Right? We had to throw away everything we owned. It was brutal. But here's basically where I'm getting with that. Jen, one, felt awful. Depression was at play. And with Vivian, it was the only baby that we had where she was like, I can't get the baby weight off. It's stuck there, right? Then we started learning about, what your body does to protect itself from mold. She had to go through a gnarly detox, change the diet. It was very restrictive in the beginning. And then all of a sudden, it started clearing up. She started feeling better. Weight started coming off. But that was it's
very
brutal
neurotoxic too.
Yeah. The mental part, I would probably say, was the worst for it. So do you have any clients that go through that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's
common. We test
common.
for mycotoxins.
Okay.
Yeah, very, very common. Food mycotoxins are the most common. That can be found in grains, fruits, especially dried fruits. Coffee is actually a big source. Okay. If you've seen Dave Asbury, his Bulletproof Coffee, so he had mold toxicity. So he created his coffee to be a mold-free coffee because of the high amount of mold that's typically found in coffee.
So is his coffee pretty good? Like, if you're going to drink coffee, you don't want to worry about mold, get Bulletproof?
Yeah, Bulletproof is a good source. I mean, there's other mold-free coffees out there, but he's pretty well known for that one. But there's the food-based molds, and then there's like the bad molds, like environmental black molds. Like those ones are exponentially more detrimental to one's health and how it can wreak havoc. Okay,
so there's going to be, I already know, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to watch this podcast that go, I'm dealing with that. Oh my gosh, you just labeled exactly how I'm feeling. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, learn more about you, get into a program, how are they finding you? What's the best path?
Yeah, my website, it's rachelscheer.com. We do a free root cause analysis call. So we do a bit more of like a deep dive into somebody's health, their symptoms, and what testing would be good for them. So we run all of the tests. We'll do environmental, mycotoxins, heavy metals, full gut microbiome, SIBO testing, hormones, adrenals, thyroid, inflammation, metabolic. So we're able to get a full picture of what's going on and then create a functional root cause framework to address things in the sequence that they occur.
And then what if somebody wants to just follow you and wants to hear more about what we talked about today, but just, daily? Where are they finding you?
Instagram, Rachel Scheer.
Okay.
And my practice is Rachel Scheer Nutrition.
Amazing. And what's your newest book? I want to make sure I highlight that real quick.
The newest book coming out? We don't have a name?
No. The one.
Oh, my current book coming out. Okay, I got another book coming out soon. But the current book I have is Root Cause, A Complete Guide to Functional Nutrition.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel like I just wanted to pick your brain all day long. Thank you. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I'm curious what the other rapid fire ones are now. Those were just off the top of your head? Oh, no, you had those.
Nope. I was going to try it. The other one was going to be
we kind of got through them.
Supplements.
Underrated. I said most of them were underrated.
That's everything underrated.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Here we go. Thank you.
Great.